Good evening, Cincinnati. My name is Luke Banks, and I am honored to be back on WVXU once again. Last time I sat in front of this microphone was about 20 years ago. Some of you may remember I did a jazz show from 1980 through 1985. And I did Friday afternoon, what was called drive time, 4 to 7 p.m. Back in the heyday of jazz in Cincinnati. It's been a real honor to be asked to come back and do a one-hour program tonight. Thank you, Lee Hay, who's standing behind me, for inviting me, and everybody else here at WVXU that has been involved. George Zahn, Dr. Jim King, and others. I'll save the rest of that for my goodbye 1 hour from now. In the meantime, I'm going to do a show tonight that is a duplicate of what I did 20 years ago. And the jazz format for tonight is pretty contemporary jazz for the 1980s. Like rock in the late 60s and early 70s, when rock became its most creative. Contemporary jazz really had its heyday in the late 70s through the mid-80s. And that's the music we're going to feature tonight. Since I did Friday afternoon drive time, the show began on a very up note, and that's the way we're going to start off this evening. This first piece I'm going to play is interesting in that the first time I played it, a gentleman called the radio station and said that he was a former fighter pilot. And this next song reminded him of climbing into an aircraft and taking off in it and go flying. So, I would like to invite you to strap yourself in, put on your seatbelts, and if you got a parachute, put that on too. Get ready, we're about to take off. That's a piece of music called Flying Colors. The artist, vibraphonist Mike Mainieri. The album recorded 1981 in New York with an all-star lineup. Don Grolnick on keyboard, Steve Kahn guitar, Marcus Miller bass, Peter Erskine drums, Warren Barnhart on acoustic piano and synthesizers, Tony Levin bass, and some accompaniment on the album by Randy Brecker, amongst others. Now that's an all-star lineup if I ever heard one. Tonight's show will feature the heavy hitters in contemporary jazz from the 80s. And we'll have more of that in just a moment.
The Physicians Underwriting Fund is supported by Dr. Patricia Bender of the Cincinnati Rehabilitation and Holistic Wellness Center. Dr. Bender provides a variety of services ranging from lymphatic drainage to needle-less acupuncture, as well as nutritional evaluations. She's been a licensed healthcare practitioner for 20 years. Information available from Dr. Patricia Bender at 772-9065 or www.chiropractic4u.com. That's chiropractic, the number 4, and the letter U.
We started off tonight's show with a song from guitarist Larry Carlton, longtime studio musician who played on albums by famous bands like Steely Dan, many other albums of artists who are considered perfections in their industry. This was Larry Carlton's first big solo album recorded on Warner Brother Records, 1983. Name of that piece, Song in the Fifth Grade, and that came off the album called Friends. Hey, good evening to you, Cincinnati and Midwest United States. My name is Luke Banks. Last time I was here on the X-Star Radio Net, there was no X-Star Radio Net, there was just WVXU, and my, how things have changed since then. This station has become a network, and it went from serving the metropolitan Cincinnati area to serving a wide swath of the Midwestern United States, much of Ohio, parts of Indiana, and parts of Michigan. And for those who have never heard me before, I would like to say good evening. It's a pleasure getting to know you. And for those of you who remember me, your age is showing. Let's get back to some more music now. This song is a particular favorite of mine, from the Pat Metheny Group. And this album also comes from the mid-'80s era, a little bit after I left VXU, 1987 to be exact. It's one of my favorites. It's something that touches my heartstrings from Pat Metheny, and I dedicate this to my wife. Last Train Home, the last hurrah, on the X-Star Radio Network. Lyle Mays from the album Street Dreams. And a piece of music called, appropriately enough, Hang Time. 25 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. My name is Luke Banks. Honored and proud to be back at WVXU for this 1 hour stint on a Friday night. I feel right at home, except for the engineering faux pas that I started the set out with. Before Lyle Mays, who was really half of the Pat Metheny group, was the whole Pat Metheny group with Pat Metheny, Lyle Mays, Egan and Gottlieb, from the album Still Life Talking, one of my favorite Pat Metheny songs, Last Train Home. I guess a little bit symbolic of the time for me here at WVXU and the X-Star Radio Net. A last hurrah for us all. Be right back.
Programming supported by Cruise Holidays of Mason. Cruise Holidays' goal is to match the right cruise to the customer's vacation desires. They offer suggestions to help customers make sense of all that is involved with cruising and can assist in booking cruise vacations throughout the world. Information at 5540 South State Route 741, Mason, or at 459-7795.
For those of you just joining in, we are featuring music from the late 70s through the mid-80s and maybe a little bit into the later 80s. A period of time for contemporary jazz that I call the heyday of the art form that has now become the modern elevator music of our generation. Very unfortunate. But in the beginning, lest we forget, in the beginning, this was very creative stuff. It was cutting-edge music. It was discovery type of music. Jazz going from mainstream to fusion and then into what was then creative contemporary jazz. So that's what we're hearing for the next half an hour or so, at least while I'm around anyway. The next piece is from Chick Corea, Wind Dance.
pianist, composer, bandleader Horace Silver this Sunday on the Bop Connection. Few jazz musicians have had a greater impact on the past 50 years of mainstream jazz than Horace Silver, as his abundant portfolio of compositions has provided other musicians the material to learn from, work from, and develop. Horace Silver this Sunday afternoon at 5 on the Bop Connection with yours truly, Bob Nave, over the X-Star Radio Network.
Bob Nave, a perennial here at the X-Star Radio Net and WVXU. I had the pleasure of working with Bob Nave during my tenure in the early 80s here at WVXU. I'd like to say hi to everybody one more time. Good evening to everyone. My name is Luke Banks, a former jazz show host here at WVXU from 1980 to 1985. And I am honored to have a last hurrah here at the station, to share a last hurrah with WVXU. Very much an honor. It was always an honor and a joy to do jazz shows on a open format, a creative station that WVXU is, and it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to have one more last hour. Officially 19 minutes left, so let's get back into it. If you can't tell, I'm playing music from that era, from the 70s and 80s, when contemporary jazz was a creative art form, before the advent of cookie-cutter soft jazz, or whatever you call it now, elevator music. But this stuff is definitely not elevator music. This next set starts off with a piece from Passport, one of my favorite groups out of Europe. And on this particular album that was recorded in 1988, the guest keyboard player was Brian Auger. If you remember Brian Auger's Oblivion Express from the early 70s, and Brian Auger in the Trinity from the 60s. That harkens back to the days of Jelly Pudding, if I remember correctly. At any rate, Passport, a European jazz group, very creative for their day. This is an album called Talkback, and this is Nico's Dream on the X-Star Radio Net. From the group Wishful Thinking, the album named Way Down West, recorded in 1988. The title of that piece, The Gentle Soul. That song's dedicated to my son, who's sitting in front of me. How appropriate. Good evening, everybody. I'm Luke Banks. Just tickled pink to be here on WVXU and the X-Star Radio Network. A whopping 6 minutes left of my show tonight. Oh, how time flies. We have one little break here, and we'll be right back to do a finale.
From the early 80s until the mid-90s, WVXU aired Nightwaves, a college rock program that ran the gamut from new wave to the grunge scene and everything in between. Now for one weekend only, it's back, and so are we. Join Dave Miller, Matt Lacefield, Christian Boyles, Jeff Coberdahl, Steve Barton, Michelle Solka, and yours truly, Mike Boberg, for the return of Nightwaves. Friday and Saturday night, July 1st and 2nd from midnight to 6 a.m. That's the return of Nightwaves, one weekend only, July 1st and 2nd, midnight to 6, here on WVXU.
This is a last hurrah for all kinds of programming here at WVXU. It's amazing to sit here in front of the board as a host and to sit in front of the radio as a listener and watched truly the passing of a great era in public broadcasting and in any broadcasting in Cincinnati and throughout the Midwestern United States. Much of the programming here at WVXU has been so special, so unique, so creative, cutting edge, groundbreaking. Idiosyncrasies, for example, the jazz programming, and all of the specialty programming that's been provided to our listeners over the years. Before we play our last song here tonight, I wanted to go back and talk about a couple of songs that I didn't mention. I mentioned the Chick Corea piece that we started off the set before last. That was from the album My Spanish Heart, a piece of music called Wind Dance. And you may not have recognized the group that was after that, but you sure will when I mention their name. That was the group Weather Report. That's right, Weather Report, from the album Heavy Weather. That album is what made the song Birdland famous. And I was tempted to play that piece, but it's been played so much. I wanted to do stuff tonight that maybe you didn't hear in a while, or if at all. So that's what we're doing here tonight. My last piece this evening, as we wrap it up, is from a guitarist out of Europe by the name of Jan Akkerman. He has a fair amount of fame in Europe, but received very little exposure in the United States. This is his first solo album. He was the lead guitarist with the group Focus that did Hocus Pocus. Remember the yodeling rock song? Well, this guy is really, really talented. Jan Akkerman from his self-titled album Sky Dancer on the X-Star Radio Network. That's Jan Akkerman from the album Jan Akkerman, Sky Dancer. This is Luke Banks, for the final time saying goodbye to all of my friends and the friends of WVXU and the X-Star Radio Network. Before I go, I would like to give thanks to all of those that made WVXU possible. The late Father Flynn, may he rest in peace, God bless him. Dr. King, and all the volunteers, thank you so much for everything you've done. Bye-bye.